Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at this new Tier 6 Compiler Science Dreadnought. This is a ship that is going to be free for a limited time, and I'll be going over how exactly you can get it for free. Chapters will be listed down below if you want to skip ahead to various points in the breakdown and info about the ship, but let's dive in first to the availability of the ship. This ship is the reward for participating in the 13th anniversary event in Star Trek Online. And this event will be running on PC from January 24th through February 23rd of 2023. And for those of you on console, it hasn't been announced yet exactly when your anniversary event's going to be starting, but if it follows the trend that it has for the past year or so, then your anniversary event should be starting sometime around March 14th and would run through April 13th. And if you are looking to get this ship, you will have to participate for 20 days worth of the event. So basically, you need 40 progress points to earn the ship, and you can get 2 every 20 hours. So basically 2 a day. And once you have earned or completed the 40 points worth of progress there, the ship will be unlocked account wide and will be reclaimable. If you're curious as to what you can do to earn progress each day, I have that detailed over at the right side. You can play the new TFO or the one that came out back in the fall, Eye of the Storm, and either of those once a day would give you your 2 points for that day. There's also a new TFO, a ground one, Birdcage, that would get you 2 points. You can also do the Upiter Eratus TFO. That's a space one. So doing that or the new TFO daily would also be another way you could get 2 points. And the last 3 options are 2 new patrols that they're introducing or the Omega Particle Stabilization minigame. And if you do any of those, you would have to do a mix of 2 of those per day to get your 2 points. Now, if you're looking to buy the ship out, you can buy it out with a base cost of 1,000 Lobi crystals, and that buyout will decrease for each point of progress you have during the event, and each point will reduce the Lobi cost by 25 Lobi. So if you get 20 points worth of progress done and you decide you just want to buy the rest out, then that would cost you 500 Lobi crystals to pay for the remaining 20 points worth of progress. Now, Lobi is very expensive, and I would generally not recommend that you go down this buyout route unless you absolutely need to. 1,000 Lobi crystals is going to normally cost you a few $100s worth of lockboxes to obtain, so I would be very much recommending that you do not go down that route. However, if you are, like I said, if you're going to miss out on getting the ship entirely otherwise, then maybe consider it, because if you miss out on this anniversary event or the buyout period, which will be around for about 3 months after the event ends, then you're going to have to wait 2 to 4 years for them to go through and add this ship to either the Muds or Phoenix stores. And if it goes to the Mud store, then you would be able to buy it for about $40 account wide. And if it goes to the Phoenix store, then you're looking at about $70 to get it for a single character. So ideally, you just want to get it free during the current anniversary event. Now, the ship is a bit different from most of them we see in the game, and there's some high-res pics of the ship up over on Twitter, courtesy of Thomas. And I think the ship looks pretty neat from a variety of angles. It's got some neat visual design approaches that they went with it, or that they took with it. And overall, its inspiration is from V'ger. So I'm going to leave a link to the 10 Forward stream and Thomas's tweet here where he goes over some of the artwork for it, and where he talks about some of the inspiration for the design. And you can go through and take a look at those if you're curious to see how they came up with this specific design for this ship. And size-wise, I always know that for some of you that is a factor, and this was taken on the 10 Forward stream earlier tonight. And here is this new ship compared to the Enterprise J. It is absolutely massive. The Compiler Science Dreadnought is truly a massive ship, and We don't have the mobility stats yet, but you can only imagine that this thing is probably not going to turn very well. And if you're curious about Vanity Shields, I'll also include a link to the 10 forward stream where they showed some of those off on it. And the one that I liked the most was the Lucari Rep Vanity Shield. This is a Vanity Shield that I like on a variety of ships. It's one that you can get free from that reputation with just some marks and stuff, so that is a very great Vanity Shield to use, and it looks absolutely stunning on this ship here. Now, for the layout of this ship, we have a 4-3 weapon setup, and as a Science Dreadnought, it should be able to equip dual cannons. They didn't specify that, but every other Science carrier, or Science Dreadnought so far that they've released, has come with that setup. This has a secondary deflector, 3 device slots, it's got 3 engine tac consoles and 5 science, and it has a hangar bay. That's one of the things with these Science Dreadnoughts, is that they get to keep their secondary deflector, but they only get the 1 hangar bay. A reminder that the science-focused carriers trade their secondary deflector for a second hangar bay, and believe me, the secondary deflector is going to beat out any Hangar Pet that you could get from a second slot. The secondary deflectors are insanely potent. For the bridge officer stations, we have a Commander Science, a Lieutenant Commander Science with Temporal Operative, a Lieutenant Commander TAC, a Lieutenant Universal with Temporal Operative, and an Ensign Engineer. And this is overall a fairly solid setup, and I'll dive into what exactly this setup will be good for here in a minute. But I know some of you are going to ask, why doesn't this ship have a full specialization seat? And just a reminder that with these event ships that can be freely earned, the overall design of them is going to be quite decent, but the bridge officer setup is always going to be a little bit lacking when it comes to specialization seating. And that is because they want event ships to be a tier below any standard C-store ships, because they want people to still feel like that there's a reason to go out and pick up a C-store ship, a promo ship, a lockbox ship. So these types of ships are always going to be slightly weaker stats-wise than the comparable C-store offerings. So what will this ship be good for? And, with this ship having a fixed Lieutenant Commander TAC and then that engineer seat, I'm going to have to say that this ship is very much going to lead in towards an exotic setup that is also focused on weapons. So that means Sci Torp or Do Sci. The thing is, with the really high-end exotic builds, you want to have a ton of science seats, basically, and having this forced Lieutenant Commander TAC and then that forced Ensign Engineer is just going to limit this ship when it comes to its raw exotic potential. So it's still going to be a very good platform, and the temporal seats are going to help it a little bit, but it's that Ensign Engineer and that Lieutenant Commander TAC that are really forcing you to dive in more towards the mix of exotic and weapons type setups there. So it's a solid setup. Just know that you are going to need to look into Sci Torp builds or Do Sci if you really want to maximize this specific setup of the ship. And compared to the other Science Dreadnoughts, it's actually not that bad. You see, most of the Science Dreadnoughts, even some of the promo ones and the lockbox ones and the lobby ones, most of them don't have a full spec seat either. Only some of the more recent ones do. But this ship actually holds up quite well against even some of the older promo and lockbox ones, and especially like the Paradox Temporal Dread there. This ship holds up quite well. The temporal seating is quite rare on any of the other Science Dreadnoughts. The only other Science Dreadnought that even has a temporal seat is the Sona Collector, and it's an Ensign Temporal. So this ship is going to be a bit more exotic friendly than any of the other temporal or any of the other Dreadnoughts, in my opinion, the Science Dreadnoughts. So I think overall, even though it is a free event ship, I think it's going to hold up very well over time to the other Science Dreadnought options. Now, this ship does come with a few different special features, and the first thing is that it is introducing some new special weapons, and these weapons don't have any special proc. They're called digitizer. So there's like plasma digitizer beam arrays, then there's plasma digitizer torpedoes, and so on. And the ones that come with the ship, of course, are not upgradable. But what these weapons do is they introduce another way for Cryptic to like sell weapons basically moving forward. When you kill a target with these weapons, it has a different killing animation or different death animation for the enemy. So rather than their ship exploding, it's going to vaporize, sort of like what you saw back in uh, the movie that had V'ger in it, where the ship's just like vaporized. That's the type of effect they're going for. So we can see this on the latest 10 forward at an hour in. So it's going to be a bit hard to see, and you'll have to focus in towards the left side of the screen here. But if you look here, you can see this vaporize effect in action. You see how that ship's vaporizing rather than exploding? That is basically what these weapons do. Outside of that effect, these have the exact same proc as normal plasma. The only difference is that if you kill an enemy with these types of weapons, then they vaporize rather than explode. And while it does suck that the weapons on the ship are not upgradable, that's quite common with any weapons that come on ships. There's only a few exceptions out there. They did mention that the new episode should have a better version of these weapons as a reward that you would be able to go through and upgrade. We'll have more information about that, I imagine, in the next week or so, but at least it's nice that they're introducing weapons that do something new, and they're giving us a way to potentially earn some that are going to be upgradable. There's been a ton of weapons in the past few years that they've introduced that were one-off, that were just, minor variations on existing weapons, and they came with the ship, but there was no other way to obtain them. So I'm glad that in this case, they have decided to put these weapons into the new mission. We'll just have to see how the availability is there. The ship also comes with some new Hangar Pets, the digital construct drones. And these have a couple plasma beam arrays with that digitizer effect and a dual beam bank. And they have a heavy plasma digitizer probe that they can launch. They also have a subnucleonic pulse effect, which PvPers are going to love. They have beam overload on them, gravimetric conversion 1, and they have a new type of ramming speed ability that will occur if they're at low HP. So these pets, we're going to have to wait and see how they are performance-wise, but they look interesting. I don't expect them to be anything meta DPS wise though, but they do have those digitizer weapons on them, so anything they kill will be vaporized rather than exploding. And these pets can be used on the compiler or any full carrier. So if you have any dual bay carriers and you want a new type of pet to mess around with, these might be something to consider. And they don't have a torp on them, it looks like, so hopefully they shouldn't steal concentrate firepower. And here's what the Hangar Pets look like. It's not that high quality of a picture. Again, this is from their 10 forward stream, so I'm limited in regards to how much bitrate they gave their stream. For the Starship Trait, it is digital compilation, and basically when you kill a foe, it will transform them into a digitizer probe that will then go around and chase any nearby foes for 15 seconds, and each one of those 15 seconds, it will deal plasma damage to any other foes within 2.5 kilometers. So it's basically going to shoot around those V'ger balls of lightning that will deal plasma damage to any nearby foes. The console has passives on it for 20% power transfer rate, 28.5 Starship BPG skill, 5% shield hit points. And the clicky on this is actually a really creative and neat functionality. And it's not necessarily going to be meta, but what this does is it will transform you into a digitizer probe, so one of those balls of lightning. And The issue is that when you transform yourself into this digitizer probe, you're only in it for up to 20 seconds, and in that time period, your weapons and abilities are disabled. So for that 20 seconds that you're in this console, and you can turn it off to get out of it earlier, you are not going to be firing your weapons or using any of your abilities, which is going to be quite rough on your performance. You will get a speed boost and turn rate boost while you are flying around as a ball of lightning, and you will deal plasma damage to any foes within 5 kilometers of you. And when you come out of the transformation, you will then deal an additional chunk of plasma damage. In addition, after 5 seconds of being in the mode, you will then spawn in some digitizer probes, which will then go around and chase their own targets and do some additional damage. So I have a video that I can show you of this console in action at 59:35 in here. Go back to it, and let's take a look at it. And apparently, according to what they were saying on the stream, it does not have the sound that you would expect from the original movie, but still, it's a neat functionality that you can just fly around as this ball and do damage to things. It's not that much damage, but I'm certain someone out there is going to go and mess around with this and find a way to really boost it up. But it looks like fun. It just doesn't look like it does much damage-wise. So let me just recap on my thoughts about the ship. I think that the ship is really creative. You know, I think it's definitely something new. If I pull those pictures back up from Thomas, it is not really, it's not like anything we've really seen before in the game. I know that it looks similar to ships from a few other sci-fi franchises, but I think it's a really neat design. And I like that they went out and, you know, were really creative with the anniversary ship this year. I think it's great. The ship itself has a really solid layout. It looks interesting. It looks unique. It's a big, massive ship, and it's actually got a fairly decent setup on it. So you could very easily, as a free-to-play player, go through and set this up with a Sci Torp or a do Sci type build, and easily get through basically any content in the game. And another thing that I really like about this is that it introduces, you know, some new mechanics. All this digitizer stuff that it's introducing looks to be quite interesting. It may not be meta, but it looks like it's going to be really fun to mess around with. And at the end of the day, you know, it's a game, so messing around with some new things and having new approaches to play the game is always welcome. And I think that Cryptic has really nailed that here. So while I don't think the ship has, you know, much, if any, impact on the DPS meta, I do think that overall it's a very good release. The trade-off of it could be interesting, especially on like more of a budget DPS build if the performance from it is good. And overall, like I'd have to say I'm really impressed with this. You know, some of these alliance ships in the past few years, I wasn't really that impressed with. Like the art style of them was interesting, but I didn't feel like they really introduced that much mechanic wise. And this year with this ship here, the Compiler Science Dread, I do think that they've really nailed it. They've went in, they've been creative and introduced some new dynamics to the gameplay, at least with how we can mess around with some builds. So I'm going to give it to the Cryptic on this one. This is a really good release, and I would recommend highly that you do not miss out on this event, because if you miss out on this, you know, the next chance for you to get it, like I went on about earlier in this video, the next chance for you to get this ship, if you miss it during this anniversary event, is going to be in the Mud Store or the Phoenix Store 2 to 4 years from now. So if you have any itch at all to play Stow, or you feel like you might want to get back into it in the near future, I highly recommend that you get into the game during the time period that the anniversary event is active on your platform, and that you go through and get the dailies done so that you can earn this ship completely free. This is a very solid ship. It's definitely quite unique, and it introduces some very interesting dynamics as to how we can mess around and build with ships. So I think overall, very good release, and it's not what I was expecting, but I'm glad that this is what we got. So once again, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. That's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below. Let me know what you think of the ship. You know, were you expecting another Alliance ship? I know I certainly was, but now that we've seen this, I'm glad that they went with this. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you all for watching, and see you guys next time.